All right. And we are ready to begin this last session of our candidate forum this evening. So I'll start by introducing our candidates. We have Senator Adrian Dickey. Senator Dickey lives in Packwood with his son, Kyler, and says that it has been an honor to be a senator in a community that he has lived in all of his life. He graduated from Pekin in 1992 and from the University of Northern Iowa in 1995. Adrian hurried through college to return to his family business, Dickey Transport, where they employ 85 people. For the past 27 years, Senator Dickey has held various roles in the company, including being the president for the past 6 years. Senator Dickey is also the chairman of the board of the Iowa Motor Truck Association. This industry is the second largest employer in the state. Even though it's rare as a first-term senator, due to Adrian's extensive experience in business and transportation, he was named chairman of the Business and Labor Relations Committee and vice chairman of the Transportation Committee. Senator Dickey also serves on the Senate Ways and Means Committee. Please welcome Senator Adrian Dickey. Then we have Senator Rich Taylor. Senator Taylor was born and raised on a small family farm northeast of Mount Pleasant, which he currently operates. He lived in rural Henry County most of his life, except while serving 7.5 years in the United States Army and Iowa Army National Guard. He graduated from Mount Pleasant High School in 1972. He worked for various factories, Cargill Seeds, Mount Pleasant Ford Tractor for 12 years, Montgomery Wards in Fairfield and Bloomfield for 6 years, and the Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison, where he also served as the state employees contract negotiator for 16 years, before he retired in 2010 after 27 years of service to the state of Iowa. Most recently, he was honored to serve 8 years as Iowa Senator from 2013 through 2021. All in all, Senator Rich Taylor proudly served the great people of Iowa for most of his life, nearly 43 years. Please welcome Senator Taylor. Thank you. And we'll start with opening remarks and opening comments. And Senator Dickey, we'll have you go first.
Thank you. Thank you much for the kind. I'm sorry. Apologize. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. My name is Adrian Dickey, and it's great being with you tonight. Yes, I've lived in Packwood my entire life. I hurried through college just to return back to the family business where we do employ 85 people. For the past 27 years, I have been had various roles within Dickey Transport, with being the president the last 6 years, and recently was named the chairman of the board of the Iowa Motor Truck Association. This industry is the second largest employer in the state, with 1 out of every 13 paychecks coming from the trucking industry. From these experiences, I know firsthand what it's like to make sacrifices to make payroll. I know how it is to deal with endless government regulations and red tape that causes a loss in productivity and loss in profits. I know firsthand the difficulties that private businesses face when they're competing against state and federal governments for skilled workforce. I have a very community-focused mindset, which has led me to volunteer for many groups and organizations over my lifetime living here. I've been the past president and board member of the Jefferson County Hospital Foundation for 9 years, Parish Council of St. Mary's Catholic Church, and many, many other groups. However, my greatest fulfillment for community service comes from my 30 years as being a volunteer within the Packwood Volunteer Fire Department. That past volunteerism has earned me the support or endorsement of every fire chief in the 5 counties that make up Senate District 44, and there's 28 of them. In addition, I have the endorsements of all 5 county sheriffs that make up Senate District 44. I would like to take just a few moments to point out the monstrous accomplishments that our party has achieved in the last couple years since I've been in the Senate. We have passed a $1 billion property tax relief bill for hardworking Iowans over the next 8 years. This year, we follow that up with a $2 billion income tax reduction bill that will take us to a flat 3.9% tax rate. We've made farm and retirement income for everybody over the age of 55 tax-free. We've ensured that our students will be in the classrooms full-time. We've secured Iowa's elections. We've made sure that boys that God created as boys would compete only against boys and not against girls in our athletics and schools. We've protected the Second Amendment rights of Iowans, passing the Life Amendment, back to blue. Is there anyone here tonight that serves in our law enforcement community? Well, if you do, I challenge each and every group, and every group I ever speak to, this is one common thing that I said. These men and women have literally gone through hell the last couple years, protecting us and serving us and protecting our freedoms, the things we take for granted. I challenge every one of you, when you see these men and women, take 10 seconds out of your day, walk up to them and say, sir, ma'am, thank you. That's all you got to do. We passed amazing back to blue bills last year, right? And they are very appreciative of those bills, but there's nothing that they appreciate more than a few seconds from us to say thank you for what they do for us. You know, there's been many questions here tonight, some that were a little bit of a surprise, some that don't hit the topics I think many of you came here to hear tonight. I hope the next segment we have some questions that really hit some of the issues that you're wanting to hear. And if we don't, I apologize to the moderators because I know a lot of time and effort went into setting up this debate. But some of the key issues aren't addressed. I'm probably going to go off script and answer the questions you're wanting to hear. So I apologize ahead of time for that. Anyway, it's been a pleasure to serve this district in the last 2 years, and I look forward to your support.
Thank you. And Senator Taylor, your opening remarks.
All right, thank you, Ian. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's very important that there's good, strong community involvement in this process. This is not about me. This is not about Senator Dickey. This is about you, the people of the district. Do you feel you're being fairly represented? Do you feel like your voices are being heard? Or do you go to Des Moines to find your senator's not there, your representative's not there? They don't have time to talk to you. They don't answer your email. That's something I always, for my 8 years as the Iowa State Senator, actually for part of this new district, including Fairfield, that was something that was very, very important to me. If an email slipped by me, I don't know how it did, because my wife was very forceful into making sure that I got answers to everybody. If her little box wasn't checked off, she was on me day and night until I got to them. And sometimes that was late into the night. But it was very important. Sometimes we didn't agree. A lot of times we did. But all times we respected each other's view. We had reasons. It wasn't because my party said to do this that I did things. I did things according to what my conscience was and what the conscience was of the people I represented. I've always taken it very seriously that a party is great for getting to be elected. You've got to have a party behind you in Iowa, the way this whole thing is set up, which I wish was different. I wish there were new political parties. But the fact is there are. And you can't get there without one. You see very little, very few independents that win an office. But I think that once you're in office, the party needs to go away. They don't need to be telling their elected officials which button to push. Push the button that you feels right. And that's what I've always did in representing you. I bucked my party a lot of times. Some of you, even in my party, disagree with me on some of the things I voted against. But I had good reasons that came from good people. Once in a while, my mind could be changed. I didn't always even follow my own conscience a lot of times when I'd talk to my friends and neighbors, and they'd explain their viewpoint, and I was open enough to look and say, yeah, I get your point. I'm wrong. And I've always been able to do that. My entire life I've been able to do that. I worked at the Iowa State Penitentiary for 27 years with a lot of good people and a lot of really bad people. But I learned how to communicate. And I think that's very important. I think that's what the people of this district and every district in Iowa deserve, is somebody that represents them, not a political party. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll get the question and answer started. Just a reminder, please refrain from applause or loud noises during the question and answer so we can focus as much time as possible to the questions and issues at hand. And for this question, which is going to be on taxes, we will start with you, Senator Taylor. High income tax has the potential to discourage work, savings, investments, and innovation. What do you see as needed changes to the income tax in Iowa?
Actually, I thought our income tax was pretty darn fair to everyone. The people that could afford to pay more paid more. The people that couldn't afford to pay didn't pay. The people that had to choose between, are they going to be able to get their food for their kids, their medicine for their moms and dads, took a priority. We didn't try to bankrupt people. We didn't overcharge corporations. Corporations have the money. If they want to pay less taxes, raise the wages of their employees. You'll pay less taxes if you don't make so much profit. And our profits for our corporations, especially look right now at our gas companies, what they're raking in, what they're charging you for a gallon of gas or a gallon of diesel fuel. It's ridiculous. They're making the money, but they're not giving it back. They're not giving it back to their employees. They're not reinvesting it in their own operations. They're rat-holing that money, and it's not helping any of us. So our tax structure was fair as it was. This way, it's more of a regressive tax. No, it is a regressive tax. And it's just not fair to people that can't afford it. And I know there's a heck of a lot of us in this district that just don't have the money to pay for the taxes that we need to operate our schools, taxes we need to operate our hospitals, taxes we need to operate our police forces, for all of our services that we provide in Iowa. We do have to have taxes, and we do have to have enough taxes that we don't have to rely strictly on volunteers and fundraisers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Dickey, as a reminder, the question is, high income tax has the potential to discourage work, savings, investments, and innovation. What do you see as needed changes to the income tax in Iowa?
I absolutely agree with you. High income taxes for individuals or businesses discourages all of what you just mentioned. That's why it was such a major component in the vision of the Republican Party to lower everybody's taxes, corporations, individuals, everyone. Now, I just heard the word fairness said 9 different times. I guess fairness is in the eye of the beholder who's determining what's fair. We're taking everybody to what we think is a fair, flat tax of 3.9% for everyone. Now, that's also including the lowest level of income earners. Their taxes are going down because their taxes were higher than 3.9 currently. We're moving everybody down to 3.9%. That bill passed this year. Every Republican voted for it. Every Democrat voted against it. When we adjourned in May, we were anticipating that we would close with an ending balance of $1.25 billion, and we would have $1 billion in the taxpayer relief fund. That's money to turn back to you, the taxpayers, because it's money that we've been very responsible and fiscally conservative in what the needs are of the state and are giving money back to you. We've got record inflation, high gas prices, as Rich mentioned, all kinds of ways that money is leaving your pockets. We're trying to help out the best way we can by returning money to you. However, a few weeks ago, we learned some great news. We learned that we had $600 million more than what we anticipated. And our corporate income tax revenues hit $850 million, which triggered them to be lowered, which continues the cycle. It's pretty easy. The more we lower your taxes, the more tax revenue we get coming in the door. The rate that the corporate income tax is going to now is a level we weren't anticipating getting to until 2027. Let me take a minute to compare that to the tax structure and the fiscal situation of Iowa to the federal government. The national deficit now is at $31.3 trillion. Does anybody here have an idea how big $31.3 trillion is? I'll give you an idea. If every single American, and I'm not talking about the living ones now, I'm talking about every single American in the history of America was taxed $50,000, it would not pay our deficit. Or if every single man, woman, child, and dog on this world was taxed $4,000, it would not pay off our deficit. That is just insane. The spending is out of control. And all I can say is, thank God that we live in Iowa and we don't have those budget issues that our neighbors do all around us. In addition, we this year we passed part of our tax bill was reducing all retirement income for anyone over the age of 55, and that includes agriculture or farm-related income. Why is that? Well, because most people that have reasonable wealth were moving out of the state for 6 months, and the state was losing all of the income. Now we're keeping those people in the state. You know, overall, the Republican Party is doing what we said we were going to do when we took the trifecta 6 years ago, and that's providing services for healthcare, education, emergency services in the manner we said we would. We would do it in a fiscally conservative way, and would we return tax money that you need to have more than what we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is on the economy. Senator Dickey, we'll start with you. What do you plan to do to help lessen the effects of inflation for your constituents and all Iowans?
Well, I think I just said, we're lowering taxes. We're giving money back. That's the only thing. The inflation is controlled by the federal government. They print money. They control the money that's in and out of our economy. From the state level, we can do almost nothing to control inflation levels. What we can do is return money to you so you have it to pay for everything else that's super high. That's our limit. And thank God, again, we have the ability, because we've been fiscally conservative over the years, that we have the ability to do that. We're able to give money back to you, so you have those abilities right now. There was a question that was asked earlier about immigration. And I wish that a question had been asked to us. It was about, it had to do with workforce issues and immigration and how do we handle some of the workforce issues? I can't remember what it was. It had to do with the EB-3 visa process. And we do have a workforce shortage in Iowa. There's no disputing that, none at all. But the problem is that the federal government is doing absolutely nothing to improve on the immigration issue. They're not doing anything for legal immigration process. They hired 87,000 IRS agents to come after us, but they can't hire a single Border Patrol agent. They can't hire a single additional legal immigration processing agent to deal with the legal immigration applications that are just piled up. How do I know this? Well, because 2 years ago, I hired 25 individuals from South Africa, 25 professional truck drivers that have at least 15 years of driving experience, a perfect safety record. It's a process for an EB3 visa. It's supposed to take about 6 steps and 8 months to accomplish. This happened 2 years ago. 2 years into it, we're still on step 2 and have nowhere, and there's not even a horizon where we're going to get these people here. But we have people legally wanting to come into the nation, to want to be citizens. And our federal government's doing nothing to allow that to happen. But the borders are porous, and all kinds of illegal immigration comes in, and it's not the solution that we need. So, again, to answer your question, I think I answered in the first question, in that what we're doing from a fiscally conservative, responsible way. And one thing that would help us is our workforce issues.
All right, thank you. Senator Taylor, the question again is, what do you plan to do to help lessen the effects of inflation for your constituents and for all Iowans?
Well, thank you for that question. I've been out of the game for 2 years trying to figure out, from the back row, what we're doing in Iowa. And what we're doing in Iowa is we're making big corporations wealthy, very wealthy. Sure, there's inflation. Who do you think's getting that money? Where do you think that money's going? It's going to big corporations. It's not going to the little mom and pop coffee shop. It's going to the gas stations. It's going to big corporations. When I talk about big corporations, we don't have any big corporations really in this neck of the woods. We've got some that are pretty well off. We've got a little outfit in Mount Pleasant, real near me. It's called Blockbusters. Makes some pretty good money making firewood equipment. He thinks he's a big operation. He's not. He's small potatoes to the guys that's causing our inflation problems. And our inflation problems are because they're not raising the wages that they're paying their employees. They're keeping this all for themselves. That's what's happening with our inflation. That's why things are going up. We could do more in Iowa. We could do more to help the average person. We could get rid of some of the gas tax, state gas tax that we have. We've got a Department of Transportation that has way more money than they can spend. They can't find enough contractors to spend all the money that they're making in gas tax. We could eliminate the state portion of that for a year, for 2 years, but we're not even considering that. Now, I can tell you we can't eliminate that gas tax in our cities and in our counties because they're getting an unequal share of the pie. You've got streets right here in Fairfield that are in terrible shape. We've got them in Mount Pleasant that are in terrible shape. That's because they're not getting a big enough piece of the pie. We had a gas tax raise of 10 cents while I was in office. I voted against that. Not because I didn't think we needed the money, but of the way it was being distributed. It was all going to the state for their big highway projects, building a highway through a cornfield to nowhere. But yet our counties and our cities were taking roads out and turning them back into gravel. The money's going the wrong place. So I think we could do a lot for bringing down inflations if we could put the pressure on big corporations to pay their fair share to their employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is on health care. Senator Taylor, we'll start with you.
Okay.
There is a deficit in mental health care availability, especially for our younger population. What would you do as our elected official to help bridge the mental health care gap for our youth?
Well, I'm very happy to answer this question. In my 8 years as a state senator, I fought for mental health care. I was on the Human Resources Committee. Our governor at that time Governor Branstad decided that we didn't need state institutions for mental health care. And he closed the one in Mount Pleasant. He greatly affected the one in Cherokee. He destroyed basically what poor system we had anyway. He completely destroyed it. And that has just continued. We have, I believe, 61 total beds in the state of Iowa for acute mental health care for children. 61. I believe that's the right number. Now, this has been a while since I've looked that number up. I'm surprised that it hasn't lowered. It wouldn't shock me if you told me that. They say we can do it with private services. No, we can't. We tried that. It didn't work. It doesn't work. It's the same for adults. You have to have a place for some people. Some of the people just cannot. The independents, the private providers cannot take care of everyone. And we're dreadfully neglecting our entire system. We've got $1.9 billion in surplus, I believe was the number I heard. I'd rather see some of these people being taken care of than have $1.9 billion in my pocket. I've also often said, nobody's going to find me starved to death if I got a $20 bill in my back pocket and I need food. I'm going to have that food. And that's basically the same analogy that the state government should be using. We have the money. Let's feed the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Dickey, again, the question is, there is a deficit in mental health care availability, especially for our younger population. What would you do as our elected official to help bridge the mental health care gap for our youth?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I believe yesterday was Mental Health Awareness Day. And we do need to do more to identify and help those that, of our friends and our neighbors and our youth that require this additional assistance and support. Our state, actually our entire country, is experiencing a great increase in mental health related issues, especially since COVID. Especially with our youth, since so many of them were removed from their schools for so long. Thank goodness in Iowa, we were the first school to get them back into classrooms, so those issues aren't as significant, but they definitely are significant and troublesome. Governor Reynolds had a group of all the major stakeholders concerning mental health and mental health care services in the state, and they met a couple years ago and looked at how to address this issue. And one of the major issues, as Rich mentioned, was the insignificant funding, not sufficient funding that was in place. And unfortunately, with our mental health system, it was regions within the state, and the funding differed and the mechanism differed from each region. It was very disproportional from one region to the other. You'd see some regions that had good care and some that had less or not quite as good care or just poor care. They told us that if we could stabilize and increase the funding, that their system they thought that they had in place would be very effective or much more effective. So last year we did just that. We actually identified two things that we could fix at the same time. One, Iowa's had amazingly high property tax values, or not values, but property taxes. And we had made promise years ago to lower everyone's property tax. So last year what we did was we removed all the mental health funding levies from everybody in the state, removed it from them, which was a massive, that was the $1 billion over 8-year property tax that I mentioned earlier. But then what we did was we moved all the funding mechanism that used to come from property taxes, and that's how it varied from state to areas in the state. Des Moines might have a higher property tax level than southern Iowa. We moved all of that back to the general fund. That way it provided a more stable and fair income earning for the mental health, and in doing so, we committed to increasing that every year. I believe last year we increased the funding for mental health $67 million. This year I think it's closer to $120 million on top of what their funding was before. That was a very significant move on our healthcare issues. So that legislation accomplished three things. It provided a $100 million property cut. It was the largest property tax cut in Iowa history, and it moved the funding for mental health care to the general fund, which again stabilized its revenue flow. And then again, it allowed for an increase, something that they were desperately needing. So these mental health providers in the facilities we have throughout the state, or the network we have throughout the state, is able to budget and grow their system with more with more knowledge of what their revenue or what their incomes could be in the next year. This next session, for the next session in December, the Revenue Economic Committee will meet, and we won't really have our budget numbers from them until after that. But I certainly do envision that we'll be doing more this upcoming session on healthcare and addressing the mental health issues that our youth are experiencing.
Thank you so much. Our next question deals with conservation. Are you in favor of increasing funding to protect the things that we all share, such as rivers, clean drinking water, clean air, public health, bridges, roads, wildlife, and public education? And also, do you support increasing the budget for items that improve public education, public health, parks and recreation, and water quality? Senator Dickey, we'll start with you.
As a legislator, you're not an expert in anything. Maybe not an expert on anything. You might have good knowledge on some things, but you also learn that there's some things that you're not, that's not your background, and you go to others that are. This is one. I'm not going to sit up here and fool you and tell you I know a whole bunch about the subject and how to fix the issues you talked about. I know there are issues, but that's an issue that when it comes up, I will talk to other people in the ag community, on the ag committee, and people in the district that reach out to me with their thoughts on those issues. So again, that's it's just not one that I am fully abreast of and want to waste your time talking about. But I will bring up the issue on school choice, because in all night, 3 hours, that hasn't been brought up. School choice is a huge issue right now. I've heard many people mention on the stage about public schools. Well, I love public schools. I've been divorced for 14 years. In my divorce decree, it states that my children have to attend the Pekin Community School District. Why? Because I love the Pekin Community School District. I say this to tell you that I'm not a private school lover or public school hater. I'm not. However, the past several years, I have witnessed an amount of crazy, uncommon sense-like issues that happen in my beloved Pekin School District. Critical race theory, pornographic books, decisions that lack common sense. Being in the Senate the past 2 years, I've been blown away with all the insane indoctrination that I'm seeing that's happening at so many other public schools. Now, I know in business that competition makes you better. And if my customer doesn't have any other options, I really don't have to listen to what his needs are. But if somebody else comes into the game and he has some options, I better start listening or else I'm going to lose that customer. Well, because of the mass indoctrination that's been going on in some of our public schools, because some of them continually ignore the law and don't follow the law the way it's been prescribed, I see it's time to give parents, the customers, another choice. If you look at the time last year, if anybody here actually read the school choice bill last year, because I got beat up hard on that bill, but very, very few, including the school administrators that beat me up on it, actually read the bill. If you read that bill last year, you would have learned, and you had a very hard time arguing with me, that last year's school choice bill would have been a revenue generator for darn near every school district in Senate District 44. And here's why. The state allocates roughly $7,700 a year to every school for a student. Under last year's school choice or student choice bill, if a student left to go to a different school, $5,200 of that went with the student. $5,200 went to the student. The remaining $2,500 went to a fund that was then divided up among other rural schools, mainly on issues of equality, transportation equality, teacher pay equality, etc. Well, the reason why last year's school choice bill would have financially helped just about every school district in this district is because there's so few private school options. You know, there's not anywhere for children in Senate District 44 to go other than to a public school system. Most all the private school options are located in Des Moines, Iowa City, and Davenport areas where the poor populations are, and that's what this bill was aimed towards, was aimed to giving them equality so that they would have the same opportunities for private school education as a wealthy child does in those same areas. Again, last year's school choice bill would have financially helped just about every, and I would probably say about, but I don't want to go out and maybe there was one school it wouldn't have if they really were extreme and lost a ton of students. Most every school district in this district would have financially benefited from that bill, but we never hear that. You know, our state and our country has spent public money on private businesses forever.
And Senator Dickey, that is your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just a quick clarification, we did have a question earlier in one of the forums regarding education. And so therefore, I will pivot to that since that was what you responded on. And Senator Taylor, I will invite you to answer that question that originally was, funding for public education versus private school incentives has been a hotly contested topic at the state level for several years. What is your stance on this issue? And more broadly, how should we approach education in Iowa?
Well, thank you for that question too. I wasn't expecting that one, but I was a product of public school. When I started, Iowa was number one in the whole damn nation on public school. I was very proud of that fact. I went right through, got a good education. I wasn't the guy that wanted to go to college. I wanted to work with my hands. I got that help through the FFA and the ag classes that I took in high school. Participated in 4-H. That was all tied to the public school at that time. There were vocational classes in the public school. They did a great job of educating me. Not to be a doctor or a lawyer or somebody that was, the valedictorian of the school, but a great job of educating an Iowa boy. And a lot of my friends were the same way. They did a great job. Some of my friends, Mount Pleasant, went to a Catholic school. They were smart enough too. They thrived as about the same as I do. We just had a 50th year class reunion. Saw a lot of them. Everybody's doing good. Private schools are good too, for some kids. For others, they won't take them because they're too much of a problem child. And so they leave that education to our public schools. The way I always felt about the private school was, it's okay to help those parents out a little bit, but let's make sure that we help out all of the district the most, that serves all of the kids, serves all of our kids. And those kids that are in private school, they have the opportunity to take public school as well. So we can pick and choose what classes we want to take and where we want to take them. And your private schools don't offer a lot of things that are in the public schools. Most of them don't have, for instance, sports teams, which are very important to the education of our children. A lot of people think, well, that's a waste of our money, but it's not. It's very, very important to learn, for our children to learn to interact with each other, no matter what their faith, no matter what school they choose to go to. And I think that's a lot of our problem today with our kids is we're telling them this, but we're not showing them our support in the long run. I'd like to go back to the conservation question real quick.
Certainly.
My dad put terraces in and tiled his entire farm back in 1962. There were no government subsidies for doing that. He said it was the right thing to do. He wanted to make the land so it wasn't only good for me, that it was good for my grandchildren, for their grandchildren, for whoever ended up with the farm. The land was as good today as it was when he took it over 80 years ago. And I think if we can help those farmers of today maintain that land, we need to help those farmers. And there's a lot of ways we can do that from state government.
Thank you. That is your time.
Thank you.
And this will be our last question prior to closing remarks, and it regards the workforce. And we'll start with you, Senator Taylor. Immigration can help meet the workforce need in Southeast Iowa. What are your thoughts on using visas to secure workers who have emigrated from other countries?
Well, I believe that that is a great idea if we can get people to come here, even temporarily, to fulfill some of our jobs that our kids of today don't want to do. They're wanting, nobody wants to dig the ditch anymore. I dug the ditch, didn't hurt me any. I worked my way up to better things, but we need more people, especially in Iowa. Look at this Senate district that I'm in now. There's 5 counties represented by this one senator, or that one senator. When I started, I had a little bit of Jefferson County, I had a little bit of Washington County, and I had Henry County, and all of Henry County, and all of Lee County. A lot smaller district. Our kids are leaving us. So we need to find a way to keep our children at home, make them want to be here. It's great to bring in immigrants to help. Fort Madison in my last district, there's an entire Mexican community down there. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, you're supposed to say Latin American. Nah, those guys are my friends. I've known them for 30 years. They choose to be called a Mexican community, and they're great workers. And immigrants can fill a lot of these jobs that we need filled. But wouldn't it be better if we could just keep our kids here? Find a reason to make this a better community so that Iowa doesn't keep shrinking. And a lot of that, again, is economics. My daughter moved to Missouri. Her husband's works for a college down there, big college. There's better money. There's more opportunities for her kids. I can't say I blame her, but that's our own fault. Our kids didn't leave because they wanted to. Our kids left because they had to, and we did that to them through our state policies, through what we thought was our wisdom. We're not all that darn wise. We need to listen to our kids and find out what we got to do to bring them back. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Dickey, as a reminder, the question is that immigration can help meet the workforce need in Southeast Iowa. What are your thoughts on using visas and other programs to help workers emigrate here?
Yeah, well, I started to answer, I guess I kind of answered that earlier on my other question on immigration, but absolutely, we need it. We need them, and there's people that want to come into this country legally, but the issue is the federal government's not allowing it to happen. There's an 8-story building in Atlanta, Georgia. The entire building is dealing with legal immigration applications. That building has been completely empty since the start of COVID. I'm sorry, COVID's over. The people need to get back to work. That's why these applications are not getting processed. If there's not one there to process the applications, they're not going to get processed. They have a policy now that says they do not have to speak to consumers. We're the consumers. As a state senator, that's no big title, right? But when I called him up to try to talk to him, that got me nowhere. When Congresswoman Miller Meeks tried to call him up, got nowhere. When Senator Ernst called him up, got nowhere. They won't answer the phone. That's our issue on the immigration side of things. But workforce shortage, I wish I had a magic solution to fix the workforce shortage in Iowa. The fact is we have a heartbeat shortage. There's just not enough people in the state right now. As chairman of the Senate Business and Labor Relations Committee, that has been my number one issue the last 2 years. My committee spent 6 months last summer drafting a massive unemployment overhaul bill. The governor took a major part of that bill and put it in her labor bill last session. I took that as a huge compliment to our committee for all the hard work that we did on this issue. Our bill took the 26 weeks of unemployment and moved them to 16 weeks. That is now law. However, in drafting that legislation, I discovered all kinds of other information from the Iowa Workforce Development. One being, there's 2 major weeks when people go off of unemployment benefits, the first week and the last week. The first week, people that go off benefits really want to find a job. The last week, they finally realize they have to find a job. And we discovered in the last 2 years that if you pay people to stay home, there's a good chunk of them that are going to stay at home. And right there's that is a huge component of our unemployment issue right now is too many people for too long got paid, and it was too financially incentivized to stay at home. We need to inspire our people to desire more than the minimal income that comes from an unemployment check. Your next job doesn't have to be your forever job. It just needs to be your next job. And part of our bill from last year that we will rerun this year is requiring the number of verifiable job searches for people that receive unemployment benefits tied to the number of jobs available. Common sense says if there's more jobs available, you probably should be required to do a few more job searches each week. Another issue I've always had a major issue with our workforce development is the benchmark we always use is the unemployment rate, which now is around 2%. That's historically the number we used. However, the number that I feel we should really be looking at is the able but not looking number. That number is always way higher. That's the number of people that are over the age of 18 that are no longer receiving unemployment benefits but are able to work. That number typically is in the 20% range. There's a source of people where we should be targeting to help address our workforce shortage needs. We have done so much this past year to address the workforce issues that most of us don't even think about. For example, much of the tourism money we spent the last couple of years has been aimed at bringing a younger demographic and generation of people to Iowa to make it a hip and cool state. And the fact is, it's working. We have spent so much time this year on the income tax and the retirement tax. That way, that person that's 55 that would be leaving for 6 months and 1 day now don't have the reason to. They can stay in Iowa, and guess what? That means another person that might be able for a part-time job. We have done so much to try to address the workforce needs, but again, as a chairman of that committee, I am open to any suggestions. So if any of you have thoughts and ideas of how to help with that, please find me. I would love to hear them because it is one of the... The minimum wage, now, all I like would respond to it.
Yes, but you're at your time.
That's great, but I want to respond to your minimum wage.
I cannot allow you to do that because we have adhered to a strict time limit. And I apologize for the outburst. That was not intended as well, but we do need to get to closing remarks. Thank you so much, Senator Dickey, for your response there. And now it is time for closing remarks. We opened opening remarks with Senator Dickey, so Senator Taylor will have you go first to help close out this candidate forum.
All right, thank you. First, I'd again like to thank everybody for taking their time out of their busy lives to be here, to participate, to be involved in this process. I heard the minimum wage question. And I think that would do a lot to curb our inflation. When a person can't make a living wage at any job, something's wrong, especially when you're seeing employers making record profits. So that would be one thing that I will promise you that I would work on. It's not going to be easy. But nothing worthwhile is easy. And that is a very important topic. We need a livable minimum wage. Not something that's going to make you rich, but certainly not something that's going to make you qualify for poverty working a full-time job, which we have now. I will promise, as I have before and as I've proven before, that I will represent all of you. I'm not going to pick and choose sides. Right is right, wrong is wrong. And that's how I will represent people. That's how I'll represent my school districts. We can't keep shorting our school districts on funding. We can't take that money out and give it to private schools. There's just not enough money to go around, and we have to make sure that everybody gets a good education. That's another thing I'll fight for. I'll fight for our state employees to have the rights that they need to negotiate for their wages, just like you do. Your negotiations for your wages is, if you don't like your wages, you can walk out on them. Our state employees can't do that. It's against the law. You can't go on strike if you're a state employee. It's awful funny. The state has all the rights and the employees have none. That's something else that I'll definitely fight to fix. Abortion's another issue that I'll touch on real quick. It's a woman's right. It's a woman's right to what she does with her health care choices. I know a lot of you think that's probably unpopular. Maybe that's a bad idea. But where does it stop? Larry, my friend sitting here, he's 70. What's next? Larry, you're too darn old to get that knee operation you need or that back operation you need. So we're going to cut you off. We're going to make your health care choices for you. It's not fair. And one thing's for sure on health care, the government needs to stay the hell out of my life and your life. We can't have, my fellow senator over here, he runs a trucking company. I imagine he does a great job of it. I don't know. But he's not a doctor. He's not a preacher. He's not your family. Neither am I. It's your choice to make your health care decisions. And I'll see to it that you have that choice, that we keep the government out of your business. And that's something that I've been fighting for basically all my life.
Thank you, Rich. We are at time.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
And Senator Dickey, your closing remarks.
Sure. In regards, I'd like to go back to the minimum wage comment that was asked. If you're making minimum wage right now, you're not looking very hard for a different job, because I think driving in today, I saw 5 different help wanted signs. McDonald's advertising routinely for $18 an hour. Minimum wage isn't even an issue. I would be stunned if anybody in this community is making minimum wage right now. I'd be stunned if anybody in Senate District 44 is truly making minimum wage today. I could be wrong, but there's jobs needed absolutely everywhere that are paying high wages. For the past 7 months, I've worked every single day to earn your trust again to be reelected to represent you. In that time, I received the endorsements from the Family Leader, the Iowa Farm Bureau, endorsed by Association of Business and Industry, by the National Federation of Independent Businesses, by the NRA, by IMTA, by Fuel Iowa, and most proud of, I've been endorsed by every single sheriff in the 5 counties: Henry County Sheriff McNamee, Kickout County Sheriff Heaton, Mahaska County Sheriff Van Buren County Sheriff Tedrow, and our very own Jefferson County Sheriff Richmond. As a volunteer firefighter, I spent 30 years leading other firefighters, to the extent that every single fire chief in this district of Senate District 44 has endorsed me. However, earning these prestigious endorsements are not the reason why I'm asking you to vote for me. I'm asking you because I think I'm the only candidate on this stage that's actually serious about putting the time in to doing the work, to wanting to deliver good things for this district. In the past 7 months, I spent every day knocking on doors, making phone calls, meeting with groups, and putting up signs. I spent every day working to earn your support while being a single father and running a business. My opponent, who is retired, and if he was serious about really representing this district, just as I have, he would have filed his nomination papers back on March 1st. Instead, he filed them just a few hours before the filing deadline, 6 months later. In this campaign so far, I've put up over 1,000 signs. That's an insane number by any account, but I've yet to see a single sign for my opponent. Again, a sign's not why you vote for somebody, right? You don't vote because of the signs up. But the effort that I put in putting signs up to go is an example of the effort that I've put into serving this district and trying to do good things for this district. You may not agree with me on every issue. However, I don't think you can disagree that my heart is truly in this to represent the people in this district the way I have for the last 2 years and to the best of my capabilities. You know, it's been a great honor the last 2 years representing this district. I was sitting at District 41, the district's changed, the numbers changed a little bit, but it's been a great honor serving this district, the district where I've lived in my entire life. You know, every door I knock on, the most common question always comes up: why did you want to get into politics? And the first time I replied, it was to protect what common sense looks like. You know, we spend way too much time in today's society dealing with what I call common sense issues. Political issues that are dominated by social ideological topics. Should critical race theory be taught in our schools? Transgender issues. What's a bathroom called? Who can use a bathroom? Pornographic books, should they be allowed in our schools, etc.? We spend too much time on these kind of social issues because they're such an important part of what we're going through right now. So much of our time in the Capitol is dealing with those issues. It's not on taxes. It's not on most of the things we spoke about tonight. It's about social issues. That's why I was elected to the Senate, to protect what common sense looks like and to continue to protect what common sense looks like. Why common sense looks like is why I feel Senate District 44 will re-elect me next month. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight.
Thank you, and let's give another round of applause to both of our candidates for this evening. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this series of candidate forums. This was sponsored by Freeman Cavanides Law Firm. And also a quick thank you to our Leadership Fairfield and Chamber Ambassador members who have volunteered to help us out this evening as well. I hope everybody has a safe ride home, and thank you again for attending this candidate forum.